Thank you for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, new revelations about Hamas's ability to build weapons and growing concerns about the possibility of a war between Israel and Hezbollah. All that happening as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is back in Israel today. Former United States Vice-President Mike Pence also in Israel, talking to CBN about how the Biden administration is handling the war and why it's important for America and Christians to stand with Israel. Less than a week to go before Iowa kicks off the 2024 election cycle, CBN News traveled to the Hawkeye State, where we talked to both candidates and voters. We're going to hear what they have to say about this year's elections. And speaking of the presidential race, one of the top issues will be illegal immigration. We're going to take a look at the controversy over how the Department of Homeland Security is handling the crisis. All those stories and more ahead today, right here on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
I want to begin this half hour in Israel, where U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken returned today on his travels throughout the Middle East. As Chris Mitchell now reports from Jerusalem, the visit comes as Israel and the United States disagree over the fate of Gaza after the war, and as concerns grow about the possibility of a war between Israel and Hezbollah along the border with Lebanon.
On Tuesday morning, Secretary Blinken met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The secretary on a diplomatic mission meeting with leaders in the Middle East to discuss the war and the future of the region. Meeting with reporters before his arrival in Israel, Blinken outlined what he says they agree on about Gaza's future after the war. First, that Israel must have peace and security.
Second, that the West Bank and Gaza should be united under Palestinian-led governance. Third, the future of the region needs to be one of integration, not division and not conflict. And fourth, for that to happen, we need to see the establishment of an independent Palestinian state.
However, that's a sticking point for Israel. While the U.S. and others support a Palestinian-led Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government are against it. While the debate over Gaza's future continues, the growing tension between Israel and Lebanon may direct the course of the war. Blinken and others are trying to de-escalate the low-scale war between Israel and Hezbollah diplomatically. But Benny Gantz, a member of Israel's war cabinet, says time is running out for diplomacy, since nearly 100,000 residents of northern Israel can't return home. Concerns rose on Monday following the assassination of Wissam al-Tawil, the highest-ranking Hezbollah official to be killed since October 7th, and a nephew of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. Also on Monday, Hamas fired the biggest barrage of rockets since the beginning of the year. That as Israel's military campaign continues to uncover Hamas's terror infrastructure. On Monday, the IDF released footage of the largest weapons production site found in the Gaza Strip since the beginning of the war, used to produce long-range missiles capable of reaching northern Israel.
Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Chris, let's begin with this. What can you tell us about these Hamas weapons production sites we just saw?
Well, Ephraim, as we said in our report, the largest found so far, and they could reach all the way to northern Israel. That's very significant. They could go all the way to Metula, and that really puts Israel in the crosshairs, not only from Hamas, but Hezbollah on the northern border. So far in this war, more than 10,000 rockets have been fired into Israel. And so we see that Hamas had a sophisticated, a well-developed manufacturing capacity for this rocket production. Many of that technology, or much of that technology, probably came from Iran. And so since the beginning of the war, the number of weapons, tunnels, manufacturing sites throughout Gaza has been enormous. Yoav Gallant, he's the defense minister for Israel. He said it, and it seems that it came true. Gaza is and was the largest terror base in the world.
Chris, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Israel right now, pushing for a Palestinian state after the war. We've heard, even in your reporting, that Netanyahu's government is opposed to a Palestinian state. But does anyone in the Israeli government actually support that idea?
You know, Ephraim, I don't know of anybody here in the government who supports that idea. After nearly 30 years of the Oslo peace process, presumably to have land for peace, and especially after October 7th. I don't think any Israeli leader is advocating for a Palestinian state. In fact, a lot of people on the left, and those especially on the Gaza border, many of them used to advocate for a Palestinian state after what they had experienced and saw on October 7th really changed their mind. So I don't see anybody here of any significant political status that is advocating for a Palestinian state or the so-called two-state solution.
And continue our conversation about a possible Palestinian state that does bring up the contentious issue of who will rule Gaza after the war is over. The U.S. wants the Palestinian Authority in charge. What would the PA do?
Well, Ephraim, on this issue, it's hard to see the opposite sides of the U.S. and the PA. For example, the United States is calling for a, quote, revitalized Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority is saying what they mean by revitalize is they want to join with Hamas. That's what a major leader of the PA has been saying. They want the PA to form a government with Hamas to take over Gaza. And so the PA and the United States are worlds apart on this. The PA is telling the world they actually want to be more extreme. I was talking to an expert on this earlier today. He says the U.S. really can't change reality to come up with a solution. They need to face reality and find a solution. And what they promoted actually in Gaza, not necessarily what would happen in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, but in Gaza to use the clans and the families that aren't associated with Hamas to start something anew. And he was saying that they were the people that really care about the Palestinians.
Chris, let's talk about the Hezbollah leader who was killed in an Israeli attack yesterday. Was he an important figure?
Very important, Ephraim. He was recently appointed as commander of what's called the Radwan Force. He was a relative of Hassan Nasrallah. He was a friend of General Soleimani. He was the former head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, killed by the United States a few years ago. Very important figure. In retaliation, Hezbollah has been bombing or has bombed the IDF's northern command. And by the way, Ephraim, we're probably going to hearing more about this group, the Radwan Force. It's an elite special forces of Hezbollah, thousands of men strong, and they would be the vanguard of any attack against Israel in the future.
We're hearing that America's Defense Intelligence Agency believes that Israel would be unlikely to defeat Hezbollah if a war broke out on the war with Lebanon. What's the view in Israel?
Well, I don't think Israel necessarily agrees with this leaked report. It's going to be extremely difficult, but Israel is already fighting two fronts right now. Whether or not if it's going to expand to a major escalation remains to be seen. The expression I keep hearing up is, will the North open up and erupt into a major war? We need to remember Hezbollah is about 10 to 15 times the strength of Hamas, 100 to 200,000 rockets, many precision guideds. And the issue right here, Ephraim, is that many of the residents of the North won't go back until they feel it's safe. Not necessarily quiet, but when they see that Hezbollah is no longer a threat.
Continues to be a busy time for you there. What can we expect on Jerusalem Dateline this evening?
Well, Jerusalem Dateline, we're going to have an update on the latest here. We're going to have an interview with the former Vice-President Mike Pence. I think it's in your story as well. An interview with an Iranian opposition leader. He came here to support Israel. He was the first one to ever speak in front of the Knesset. We'll also have a story on how CBN partners are helping Israelis in their time of need. And certainly this is an important time to be helping Israelis and praying for the Jewish people for such a time as this, Ephraim. It's a very difficult time over here.
Indeed it is. We appreciate your reporting. Thank you so much. Chris Mitchell reporting from Jerusalem. I want to remind you, you can see more from the Middle East as well as Chris Mitchell and the entire team this evening on the CBN News channel. You can watch Jerusalem Dateline. It begins at 8 Eastern. You can also watch it on the CBN News app, or you can watch it on YouTube. Coming up, why it's so important for America and Christians to support Israel during these difficult times for the Jewish state, and what binds the two countries together. We're going to hear that message from former Vice President Mike Pence during his trip to the Jewish state. We've got the story for you. It's coming up when we come back.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
Former Vice-President Mike Pence visited Israel to show his support in its ongoing war with Hamas. He told CBN News why standing with Israel is so crucial for America and Christians. Here again is Chris Mitchell.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Words fail.
Yeah.
We were just the Kfar Aza.
We met former Vice President Pence following his visit to some of the Israeli border communities attacked on October 7th. We sat down in the bombed-out children's unit of the Barzillai Hospital in Ashkelon, just miles from the Gaza border.
I must tell you that I've been to war zones during my time as Vice President, during my time as a member of Congress. But the sites that I saw today, the aftermath of that terrorist attack on October 7th, and even a site like this, the ongoing war on Israel by Hamas, it just was pure evil.
Pence came with a message for the United States and its closest ally.
These are dire hours for Israel. And I think it's so important that the United States make it clear that we're with Israel today, we will be with Israel tomorrow, and we'll be with Israel every day until the threat of Hamas terrorists from Gaza is eliminated once and for all.
He also emphasizes that the show of support must be widespread.
I believe the United States needs to make it clear to other actors in the region, whether it be Hezbollah in Lebanon to the north, or most especially to the mullahs in Tehran, that the United States will be here for Israel and that we will be prepared if there's an effort to widen this conflict in any way.
The Biden administration is trying to actually limit maybe some of the fighting going on in Gaza. How would you respond to some of the limits that the Biden administration is trying to put on Israel?
I just don't accept it. I was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11, and America did what we believe needed to be done, taking the fight to the enemy in Afghanistan. And I remember the way our allies stood with us, and they didn't question how we were going about bringing those to justice that had attacked our country. They just stood with us. And I think Israel deserves the same now.
A lot of people right now are talking about the day after, and the Biden administration is talking about a revitalized Palestinian Authority that would take over in Gaza. Your thoughts?
I think we're still waiting for the Palestinian Authority to condemn what happened on October the 7th. I think those considerations will be proper for the government of Israel to make, and I think we should leave those to the elected leadership here in Israel, and we'll support their determination.
In January 2018, Pence addressed Israel's parliament.
The miracle of Israel is an inspiration to the world. And the United States of America is proud to stand with Israel and her people as allies and cherished friends.
As I said in that speech, we stand with Israel because her cause is our cause, her values are our values, and her fight is our fight. And I really believe that this is a moment where that relationship has been more important than ever before.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Ashkelon, Israel.
Still ahead, less than a week to go before Iowa voters make their decision in important caucuses to kick off the 2024 election year. CBN News traveled to the Hawkeye State to talk to the candidates and the voters. We're going to hear what they had to say right after this. Come Monday, Iowa voters will kick off the 2024 election year with their famous caucuses. This year, it appears there's already a clear winner in sight, with former President Donald Trump far ahead in the polls. Still, voters insist they will have the final say. So Republicans are hot on the campaign trail, trying to grab every last vote. CBN's Mal Galka talked with candidates and voters in the Hawkeye State.
So if you want to save America from crooked Joe Biden, then get every patriot you know, make sure they're registered Republicans. You can get them out to vote in their local precinct caucus at 7 p.m.
Although President Trump dominates in the polling, he's not taking any chances in Iowa, telling supporters in Mason City to make sure to vote. Polls have shown Trump up by 30 points as he's still holding rallies across the state. Iowans set the pace each presidential election cycle with their caucus. The results can have the ability to sink or propel a campaign.
I'm the only one running for president that has a record of delivering.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis continued his march across the state over the weekend, ramping up direct attacks against the frontrunner.
Broken promises from Donald Trump, and particularly this birthright citizenship issue that was asked about me. You know, he promised to do that in 2016, sign an executive order. Literally just write your John Hancock on an order. Never did it in 4 years.
DeSantis and former UN ambassador and South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley are locked in a tight race for second. Haley is casting doubt on Trump's electability. We caught up with her at an event for young voters in Des Moines.
We're getting there and we're gaining on him, and I think you can tell. I mean, I think he's, Trump started to throw temper tantrums. He's starting to spend millions of dollars on TV against us. Every bit of it's a lie. But if you got a lie to win, you don't deserve to win. We're going to do it the right way. We're going to keep on talking about where we need to go, and it's time for a new generational leader.
While both DeSantis and Haley try to paint themselves as the Trump alternative, tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy fully embraces a Trump 2.0 approach.
You require and deserve a president who'll do the hard things, not just build the wall, but use the military to seal the border.
He tells voters around the state that he has the ability to finish the MAGA agenda Trump started.
I think they're selling us the rope today that they will use to hang us tomorrow. And the reality is, this system will stop at nothing. They've made that clear, and I mean nothing, to keep this man away from the White House. They want to narrow this down to be a two-horse race between Donald Trump and some other puppet they can control. Take him out and put that puppet in, whether that's Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama or Nikki Haley. I think increasingly it looks like it's Nikki Haley. That is a trap we cannot fall into. And so you got the future of America first standing right here.
Voters around the Hawkeye State are typically all ears, and we're not talking about Iowa corn. Many we encountered are undecided as we get into the home stretch. Ron Klein is backing Trump while also liking what he hears from Ramaswamy.
I find Vivek a very interesting, intelligent, articulate candidate. He's somebody, in the absence of Trump, I'd vote for.
Outside of a dueling Haley-DeSantis town hall event, Joseph Howe is looking at Haley as the Trump alternative.
The chaos that comes with President Trump. And I believe that it's very important to preserve our republic above all other issues.
Meanwhile, Bill Siefkas is all in on DeSantis and not the former president.
You look at all the issues that's got going on with him right now. Even if he does get elected, he's going to be distracted for his first year in office fighting all these legal battles. How do you run a country when you're fighting legal battles? His attention's going to be there and not on the country where it needs to be.
While the candidates trailing Trump in the polls all try to differentiate themselves, one thing they have in common is this. They're all telling voters the polls won't decide the Iowa caucus. They will. In Des Moines, Iowa, Matt Gelka, CBN News.
Now for more on an issue that is likely to be very important during this year's elections, illegal immigration. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas defended the administration's handling of the U.S. southern border Monday during a trip to Eagle Pass, Texas, pointing a finger instead at Congress and urging lawmakers to act on immigration reform. His visit came as Republicans are ramping up their efforts to impeach him. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke brings us the story.
We are dealing with fundamentally a broken immigration system and one that has been in dire need of repair for more than 3 decades.
In the month of December, Border Patrol reportedly encountered more than 300,000 migrants crossing the southern border, nearly 11,000 in a single day. While that number is down to about 3,200 per day over the past week, the situation remains critical. Still, meeting with border agents and local administrators Monday, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas touted his record managing the migrant crisis.
We have established safe mobility offices to assist migrants in Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Ecuador, removed and returned historic numbers of migrants who entered illegally and failed to qualify for relief.
But Republicans say Mayorkas is not enforcing federal laws already on the books, sitting on the sidelines as migrants have surged into the United States.
I believe Secretary Mayorkas is an abject failure, but it's not because of incompetence. I believe he has done this intentionally.
The DHS secretary denies those claims, tasking Congress with finding a fix for the migrant crisis and urging lawmakers to provide additional funding for border security.
We need more transportation funding to facilitate an increase in removal flights and more resources for detention beds and alternatives to detention, and to bolster our family expedited removal management or FIRM process.
President Biden included more money for the southern border in a recent foreign aid funding request, but Republicans say unless significant border policy changes are also included, they won't pass it.
We understand that Border Patrol needs the necessary resources to do its job, but they can't do the job that they're hired to do unless you change the policy here, and that's why we're so insistent on that being done.
The House Homeland Security Committee is expected to hold its first hearing Wednesday in their effort to impeach Secretary Mayorkas for his handling of the border. The Secretary's office calling the effort a baseless political exercise. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Coming right back with an encouraging word for your day ahead. Stay with us.
Get your daily quick start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
Time now for your Tuesday Tweetable. This is a message I hope you'll post, tag, tweet, and share with those in your circles of influence. God knows all your faults and your failings. He stands ready to forgive, and He is still looking to use you. So remain faithful because He's faithful, and in Him there's actually no failure. He's God, and all things work together for your good and for His glory. With that word, I encourage you to make this a wonderful day. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News channel. You can find them there at any time, as well as online. That address is cbnnews.com. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen here today or any day. You can email us. The address is newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll see you back here same time tomorrow. Goodbye. God bless.